It is another week, the fourth week of this podcast, and yes, a milestone, episode 10. This is the Rich Report, bringing you the richest content across entertainment. My name is Cameron Richardson. Welcome back to the channel if you're watching on YouTube, and thanks for listening if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Joining me today, David Church and Johnny Crane. Gentlemen, how are you doing on another Monday afternoon?
The usual suspects are back for the fourth straight week, starting week 4 hot with some mid-season NASCAR grades, some mid-season NASCAR awards. It's going to be a good time coming from the guy that doesn't watch NASCAR regularly, but Cam over here got me into it somehow. And the only way he got me into it was because I might win money because of it. And if you put money in front of my face, I'm going to be like, okay, let's see what happens here. So it's a good day, good week 4. Let's get it going, boys.
Yeah, what are you running in the money standings right now? What are you doing? P8? How you doing there, David?
This guy, dude. Every intro to a podcast, he's always got to say something smart. He's always got to say something, even though his MLB team is probably the worst in the last 5 years, 6, 7. I mean, when the last time
really fighting again before we even get into the show, huh?
He starts it every time.
Oh, okay. Let's get into this.
Dad, he started it.
Yeah. So we're doing this little fun little money pool for NASCAR, and everybody gets points based on how the driver scored points for that specific race. And both Johnny and David are inside the cut line for the championship race at the moment. And I'm not doing too hot because apparently I picked poorly early on in the season. So yeah, we're going great, but I'll pick it back up. I'll get back in there.
We're taking it home for all the NASCAR guys that don't watch NASCAR.
Yes, like David discussed, we are doing a mid-season review, analysis, call it whatever you want. We're going to be grading some of the teams in the Cup Series and then giving out some awards at the end of the show, including Rookie of the Year, Most Valuable Driver, Most Improved Driver, Biggest Surprise, and Biggest Disappointment. So we're going to begin right now grading some teams, and we're going to start with Hendrick Motorsports. Now, these guys got off to a hot start to the season, showed great speed at Las Vegas and Auto Club, but since we returned from the COVID-19 pandemic, it's sort of been on the downturn. Chase Elliott had opportunities to win maybe 3-4 races in a span back in May, but it was only able to get the one in the midweek Charlotte race. But since then, they've been dead silent. Now, Elliott's been able to run in the top 10 pretty consistently, but guys like Alex Bowman, William Byron, Jimmy Johnson, although he is having a better season than last year, is really starting to fall off now to where he was the last 2 years. So Hendrick's really got to find it before we hit this last few races before the playoffs. So, David, I'm going to start with you. What do you think of Team Hendrick so far? What is your grade for them?
I'm going to give Hendricks a solid B+ with how they've run. Chase Elliott, even though he is the only guy on that team that's had a win this year, they've had good performances from both William Byron and Alex Bowman, and Jimmy Johnson's going to be always that guy. Jimmy Johnson's a legend, a living legend in NASCAR at this point. The farewell tour is fully on the rise at this point. So, I mean, Hendrick is always going to be a top winner, but I think I would have expected at least a little bit more wins from them at this point of the season, halfway through. So I think a B+ is good, and they definitely have potential to get, up there in a grade towards the back end of the season, with maybe Chase Elliott getting a little bit more wins up there because he's obviously going to be the front runner of that team. So I give them a solid B+, and it gives them room for improvement coming into the later half of the season.
Yeah, I'm going to give them a solid B. Now, Chase Elliott does have a win. Alex Bowman has a win, but when you look at their wins and when you look at the stretch that Hendrick as a whole has gone on over the past, pretty much since COVID, once NASCAR started back up again, Hendrick has really been pretty Now, yes, Elliott did finally get a win, but ever since then, he's gotten some top 10 finishes. He had a great finish in Texas after starting in the rear, but he hasn't had that dominant speed and hasn't been able to get out front like he did during that stretch where he got that win. Again, Bowman had a pretty dominant win at Auto Club, but again, that was several months ago. It seems like it was forever. And when you look at Jimmy Johnson and William Byron, they're both pretty much playoff fringe drivers at this point. And really, when you think of Hendrick, they really shouldn't be playoff fringe. They should be playoff contenders, legitimate. So while they do have some nice wins between Bowman and Elliott, and they have some nice speed, they really haven't lived up to the potential that I thought they would. And they really haven't really collected that speed and pure dominance that you would see from, say, Stewart-Haas or Team Penske. You haven't really seen that in that regard yet. So I'll give them a B.
Yeah, I mean, y'all are a little bit nicer on the Hendrick side. I give them a C-. I am not impressed by what I've seen from them. Chase Elliott is always going to be there. He's going to be a contender. He's the most popular guy in the sport. So it's kind of, he has that pressure on him week in and week out. But looking at guys like Alex Bowman has just been not showing up at all since we returned. William Byron does not have a top 5 at all this season. So another disappointing year, and his average finish has fallen off from last year. I mean, it's 3.5 positions worse on average at the moment than what his average finish was in 2019. And then looking at Jimmy Johnson, the guy's been in contention for wins. He's definitely surprised me more than he's disappointed this year, but he's got to be able to turn it on consistently, because looking at that playoff bubble, there's no room for error. He's only +2 ahead of his teammate Byron. And then looking at 18 and 19, he's only got a 24-point gap. So he's really going to have to turn it around if he wants to solidify his position in the playoffs. Moving on, Stewart-Haas Racing, one of the more impressive teams this year. Kevin Harvick, 4-time winner this year. Cole Custer getting his first win of the year at Kentucky 2 weeks ago. Eric Almirola's got 7 top 10 finishes in a row, and Clint Bowyer is just, sort of hanging around in there. He's still got a pretty, he's 15th in the playoff standings, but he's got a pretty good gap, +36. So I'm going to start with David again. David, how are you feeling about Stewart-Haas Racing so far this year?
When they have the guy who's number 1 and tied for first in wins, and a rookie who is able to come out and get his first win of his NASCAR Cup career, you got to give them an A at this point. Cole Custer did a great job when he won at Kentucky. He was able to get that, that quick slip out and able to get that win. Kevin Harvick has been dominant all year. It doesn't even matter if he seems like he's out of the race. He finds a way to get back into at least a top 5 and possibly a win. He's always going to be around there. Eric Almirola, like you said, has had consistent finishes the entire season at this point. He's on a really good run at this point. And like you said, Clint Bowyer is, a guy who's kind of hanging around, but is still, finding his way, weaving through traffic, trying to find his way and find his fitting. And I give Stewart-Haas an A at this point of the season. I think Kevin Harvick is just on his way to a good dominant season. We'll just have to see what happens when it comes to playoffs, because obviously he's going to be a for sure lock, and Kevin Harvick just has to make sure he can maintain that and have some good luck and good consistent finishes going into playoffs in the next coming weeks.
When I was grading and when I was giving out the grades for each team, I was looking at how the team is from top to bottom. And I didn't really want to give a team a high grade based off of one really, really good driver, but several subpar drivers. But with that said, Stewart-Haas to me is an A+. When you look top to bottom of that team, Kevin Harvick, we'll talk about the most valuable driver later, but I think Kevin Harvick is by far has been the most consistent and the best, fastest car from the start of the season to now. 4 wins. Eric Almirola, 7 straight top 10s, like you said, Cameron. Clint Bowyer, he's found his moments. He hasn't been as dominant as the other 2 drivers, but he's still found his moments here and there. And then Cole Custer, the rookie, he picked up that win a couple weeks ago. Top to bottom, there's a lot of youth, a lot of experience, and a lot of speed between all 4. And I think if you want to get an A+, you have to have balance. And I think balance, whether from the youth or the veterans, from the wins to the speed, they all have it. That entire team has it, and that to me is why I give them the A+. And when we look at all the teams that we're going to be grading, they're the only team that I gave an A+ to. So top to bottom, best team, I think.
Yeah, I also give Stewart-Haas an A. Kevin Harvick, not only is he winning, but he's racking up the points and the playoff points to really create that gap to where if he does have a mistake in the playoffs, he can use that as a mulligan instead of it being a disastrous, day for him in terms of points, because he will have a pretty wide gap when the playoffs begin. And so if he does make a mistake in one of the first few races, he's going to have, he's going to be pretty solidified moving on to the round of 12 and the round of 8. So it's been a great year all around for him. An average finish of 6.6 on the year, which is 3.4, which is a plus 3.4 gain from last year currently, which his average finish last year was 10th, which isn't bad at all. So, yeah, it's been a monstrous year for him. Clint Boyer just always kind of in the same spot, runs mid, between 10th and 15th. So nothing too spectacular from him, but I think he's going to find victory lane at some point this season. Mark my words. I think he will get there. Cole Custer, not the best rookie of the year so far, but he did get that win at Kentucky, which is, it gets you in the playoffs. So it's good enough. It's a little bit down from Daniel Suarez when he was in the 41 last year. It is at minus 4.2, which is kind of a wide margin, but he's going to pick it up. It's a rookie year, and he'll turn it around at some point. And then Eric Almirola, can't say enough good things about him. While he's not racking up wins, he was in contention for wins in the last 2 weeks at Kentucky and Texas. But finishing in the top 10 is what he needs if he wants to solidify that ride for years to come, because rumors have always been going around about drivers, potentially joining Stewart-Haas. Kyle Larson's been thrown in that mix. Chase Briscoe as well. So if those two end up getting moved up, and let's say they both go to Stewart-Haas, Eric Almirola definitely shouldn't be that guy that's left out in the middle. All right, now completely flipping ends here. Joe Gibbs Racing. Been an interesting year, to say the least, for them. Martin Truex Jr. has the win. Danny Hamlin has 4 on the year, but all 4 Gibbs cars are trending towards having worse average finishes this year than last year. Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr., it's not been a pretty year at all. Truex has been inconsistent, and Kyle Busch has been consistently mediocre at these races this year. So, Johnny, I'm going to start with you here. How are we feeling about JGR halfway through the season?
Well, again, it goes from top to bottom. And pretty much like you said, they've all had worse average finishes this year compared to last year. With that said, even though several of them are locked in the playoffs, yes, Denny Hamlin has a bunch of wins. Martin Truex is locked in. Kyle Busch hasn't really picked it up, and I think that is going to give them a pretty lower grade than I think people would think. I'll still give them a B- solely for the fact that 2 of those drivers in Truex and Hamlin do have playoff bids locked up. But when the reigning Cup champion from last year and Kyle Busch, who is pretty much the star of that team, we could arguably say, when he is yet to collect a win, yes, he has a bunch of top 5s, but because he hasn't cashed in that win yet, when you combine that with the mechanical issues he's had with the car that he's notoriously said over the radio several times, I think that really brings their grade down. And with that, coupled with the lower average finishes, you're not really seeing the career years that you're seeing from, say, Stewart-Haas, for example. So with that said, because of the playoff bids that several of them are locked up, I'll give them a B-, but that shouldn't be pretty resounding. They should be going for the A's and A+, and they haven't had that.
Yeah, my grade's kind of a sympathy B at this point, because this would have been the team that I would have probably given my, A to A+ grade if Kyle Busch was actually being Kyle Busch and actually winning races and actually doing things that he's expected of. And if Martin Truex is a little bit more consistent, he's had a couple top 5s and he's had a win this year, but I mean, it's at the point now where he needs to be able to be more consistent. And then Eric Jones is still kind of like a middle of the pack kind of guy, but and then Danny Hamlin's basically carrying the team at this point. You can rely on Truex to get a top 10 maybe at this point if he's actually, staying consistent and actually having good runs and luck being on his side, he can actually get a top 10 or a top 5. But with Denny Hamlin, he has to carry the team at this point. He's tied for the most wins in the season so far with Kevin Harvick. And at this point, it's going to be up to him if they want to be a dominant team this year and towards the later end of the year. And it's got to be on Kyle Busch too. Kyle Busch is supposed to be, the headliner guy. He's supposed to be the one that everyone looks at and says, oh, that's the guy. That's the NASCAR guy. He needs to be that. And he hasn't been so far at all this year. So my grade's a sympathy B. Just going to leave it at that and hope that, just see if Kyle Busch can actually turn the season around into something towards the later end.
Y'all are too nice, man. Y'all are too nice. Look, when you've coming off, a season where you had 3 guys competing for the championship at Homestead last year, you got to perform the next year as well. And so I have Joe Gibbs at a D right now, the first D, not the last one. Eric Jones not competing for wins at all, trending for a worse season than he did last year. Denny Hamlin, while he does have 4 wins, tied for Harvick with most on the year, we've seen that he doesn't have that consistency that Harvick has. So when I'm looking at title contenders, Hamlin's still without that one title to his record. It sort of, makes you nervous going down the year, wondering if Hamlin can actually do it, because we saw at Indianapolis. He had that win. Granted, it wasn't his fault. It was Goodyear's fault for the tire failure, but still. And, he wrecked that Texas yesterday too. So adding all that together, if he's going to, get involved in these incidents and Harvick doesn't, Harvick's going to run away with that title if that's what it comes down to at Phoenix later this year. And then Kyle Busch, he's usually a guy that gets hurt from cautions that come out late in the race, but no, he actually benefited at Texas, was not having a great run, was involved in that big wreck earlier in stage 2, but still pulled away with the top 5 because of that late stupid caution caused by good old Starcom Racing's Quinn Houff. Yes, that we'll save that for another day because my God, that was just embarrassing.
Are we really giving a D? I'm sorry, but Denny Hamlin's tied for the most wins in the season so far with Harvick. Can you really give this team a D?
Consistency matters, and Hamlin's having currently a worse average finish than he did last year. So consistency matters. If this was straight up points like 2003, Hamlin would not be sitting pretty right now.
You could just be like my math teacher in high school and just.
Are you gonna keep interrupting me today?
Probably.
Is that your problem? Is that your thing? Okay. Maybe. And then there's Martin Truex Jr. He does have the Martinsville win, but I believe he has not finished in the top 5 since then. Right, Johnny? Is that what you said? I don't think Truex has finished in the top 5 since Martinsville. I do not believe so.
About that. Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, D. They got to start performing better. That's all I got to say.
Hold on. Hold the phone. Okay. You want to give them a poor grade? Sure. However, in the current format, 2 of the drivers have playoff bids. And even with Denny Hamlin's car dumping ballast and skidding because of Goodyear tires at the Brickyard, I get it. Trust me. Kyle Busch should be carrying that team, not Denny Hamlin. However, why not give them a C? A barely passing, considering 2 of the drivers have playoff bids locked up. I'm not saying to give them a high grade, but a D is failing.
Eric Jones is outside the playoffs. Martin Truex Jr. is not looking like a championship 4 contender. Kyle Busch doesn't have a single playoff point to his name. So if he has a bad finish in the round of 16, he's going to have to win to move on, which is just, embarrassing when you're coming off a championship season. Denny Hamlin, is sort of falling back to where it's just Harvick in that tier 1 to win the championship this year. So when you're Joe Gibbs Racing, you have to perform at your best. There's no excuse.
All right.
Moving on, Team Penske. Team Penske.
Way to go there, bud.
All 3 of their drivers have a win this year. Joey Logano and Brad have 2. And then you can add on Matt DiBenedetto as well, because they do have that technical alliance with Wood Brothers, and DiBenedetto's having a great season as well. And I'm going to start with David here. David, how do you see Team Penske so far through 2020?
I think they're the most consistent team out there on the field. We've had Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano both share 2 wins, and then Ryan Blaney has 1. They have a combined, 14 top 5s between Keselowski, Blaney, and Logano at this point, or is it a little bit more? I think I did my math right. I'm not sure, but it's just consistency, and it's, you're always going to be able to see Ryan Blaney ran so well at Texas this last weekend and was, won both stages, and then had a little bit trouble with the pitting and the situation towards the end of that stage 3, towards the end of the race. But they've been consistent throughout the entire season. I'm giving them an A- just because I think I think Ryan Blaney needs to kind of step it up a little bit if he wants to be, in the likes of Keselowski and Logano, and step it up just a little bit more. But A-, solid effort and solid performances throughout the season.
Yeah, I'll give them an A- as well. However, before Cameron gives them a grade, which I imagine might be a little bit worse, an A minus, trending a little bit toward more of the B plus side. And I think because of that, yes, Keselowski has been solid. Blaney has been okay here and there. But Joey Logano, even though he had those 2 early wins in the season, the average finish that my good old guy Cameron did, average finish of negative 3.1, worse this year than last year. He really hasn't had that dominance that he had earlier in the season. It's sort of going back to the Chase Elliott thing. Chase Elliott, he had that dominant run where he picked up that 1 win. Then he sort of tapered off. That's sort of the same thing here with Logano, except the wins came earlier in the season and he's tapered off a lot more over a longer duration. So I think if Team Penske wants to get a solid A and contend for an A plus potentially, I think it all comes around Joey Logano. I think if Logano can sort of turn it around and have that dominance he had earlier in the season, I think that they can become an A. However, I'll give them an A minus because 3 of those drivers have locked up playoff bids. And again, to me, it's top to bottom of the team, the best driver to the worst driver and the developing drivers. And with that said, with 3 of the drivers locked up in a playoff spot, I'll give them an A minus. However, they have to be a little more consistent to keep that.
Yeah, I mean, I have a high B to a low A for Penske as well, because I'm adding in, Matt DiBenedetto just outperforming in the 21 more than they've ever had in a long, long time. But yeah, Joey Logano's really, while he does have the 2 wins at Vegas and Phoenix that me, Johnny, and Sean were at in person covering, he's really just been meh this year. Only 4 top 5s, had it yesterday, but that was once again thanks to the caution. He wasn't really in contention for a win, but thanks to the late caution, he was able to get that. But yeah, when I look at Logano, I don't see championship contender like I do. Same thing I do with Truex and Kyle Busch. They're going to need to turn it around. That I think the biggest point we're going to see is that Daytona road course. That's really going to set the pace because that's another race where we don't know what's going to happen because we got no practice, no qualifying. It's going to be absolute chaos like the first Roval race back in 2018. So you get another guy that ends up stealing a win, and that just shortens the playoff bubble even more. And if in the slow downforce package, Logano, Kyle Busch, and Truex can't perform, that's really telling moving into the playoffs. Keselowski and Blaney, I have no worry for. Blaney has been in contention to win about 5 or 6 races, but he just keeps, it's not really hurting himself. He just can't catch a good caution to save his life. Would have won yesterday had it not been for Quinn Houff. And so I'm not really going to knock him. Brad Keselowski got his 2 wins in the playoffs and just going to keep performing well. He's just cruising the top 10s race after race after race. So really no complaints out of me for them. I would say in terms of team, the biggest surprise this year, RCR. Tyler Reddick just showcasing everything we thought. 2-time defending champion in the Xfinity Series, and then comes in the Cup and is just outperforming in his RCR number 8 than we've ever seen before. Probably the best we've seen the 8 car since Dale Jr. in 2007, probably. Or Dale Jr. had a bad year in 2007, 2006. Best year for an 8 car. And then Austin Dillon winning Texas surprisingly last Sunday, and he's on track. He's got more top 5s than he already did all of last year. And he's really proving that he's more than just a Silver Spoon kid because, he's got his grandfather, Richard Childress, involved. He's the mastermind behind all of it. He's been called Silver Spoon forever. I think that's really, that narrative's got to go away. The guy's won the Daytona 500. He's won a Coke 600. He's got the win at Texas. He's doing enough to prove, hey, you belong here, kid. I think there's a lot more to him than just, oh, well, he was handed this ride. So, Johnny, I'm going to start with you here. How do you grade RCR this year?
Yeah, I'll give him a B minus. Again, that narrative of the Silver Spoon for Austin Dillon. I mean, he's won some big tier races. Now, of course, every Cup race matters, but obviously some Cup races hold more merit, more meaning over some other ones. And if you win the Coke 600, you win at Daytona, I think that definitely gives Dillon some consideration of not just being spoiled and being given equipment and not performing with it. I mean, the track record says he has, and he definitely, even with Quinn Houff, causing a ruckus and causing, the top 10 field to jumble up a little bit, he still capitalized and he still kept that clean air and picked up another win. So, I mean, I think you have to give him that at least. And then when you combine Tyler Reddick, who dominated in the Xfinity Series and now he's up in the Cup, no wins yet. Cole Custer is the rookie that has the one over Reddick, but Reddick does have a little more consistency than Custer, I think, and I think that he is definitely outperforming the 8 car, and we're seeing that 8 car sort of revive itself after Dale Jr. Had a bad year in 2007, but Dale Jr. was the number 8. He probably will always be the number 8, but at least Tyler Reddick can be potentially revive and sort of give a little more life and credit to the number 8 now.
Yeah, Tyler Reddick has been a definite standout for me since I've started, watching this season. He's just he's had good consistent runs throughout most of the season. He's had a couple hiccups here and there, but that's expected between a rookie in his first real time and a real seat at the NASCAR Cup. So, and then Austin Dillon, they both just went 1 and 2 at Texas on Sunday. They have good performances. I'm right on the same boat as Johnny, giving them a B-. It's a solid B-, and I think you can even track upwards. Once Tyler Reddick gets a little bit even more comfortable during the season and Austin Dillon riding off this last win in Texas, I think they can do even more. I think they definitely are a team to look out for in not necessarily yet this year, but in the future, 100%. If they both stay with RCR, they think they can have both great careers and have long-lasting careers as well as some championships come their way in the future. So B- right now, but don't be surprised if it starts trending towards an A come like next season or a season or two after that.
Yeah, I think it's good for Tyler Reddick to, he was able to stay with RCR moving up to the Cup Series, and he impressed last year. He actually ran a few races, and in his first Cup race, he scored a top 10. And, having, 2 Xfinity titles in a row when you weren't expected to, they're supposed to go the guys like Cole Custer and Christopher Bell, but he was that third guy and would get the job done at Homestead. And just like he did in 2 championship races in a row, he got a top 5 at Homestead earlier this season as well. I got an A for RCR. I really like what they've been doing. Seeing the 3 and 8 run 1-2 kind of, gets you in the feels right there. Those are 2 iconic numbers, 2 historic numbers, and 2 numbers that a lot of people really connect to. So that was just nice to see. But it's just nice to see RCR performing well again. I think this is going to be their turnaround year to where they can actually be consistent top 10 performers for years down the road. Because Austin Dillon is not old, and Tyler Reddick is just beginning his Cup career. So I really think that we're going to see sort of a renaissance type of era for the next 3-4 years for RCR, and especially when the equipment for cars could be more balanced for everybody come 2022. Now, Roush Fenway Racing here. I don't want to knock Ryan Newman because I think there's still a little bit of that, sort of that hesitancy because he was involved in quite possibly the scariest crash I've ever seen in NASCAR's history back at the Daytona 500. So there's that. You got to, take that into account. And then Chris Buescher, not terrible. I think he's outperforming what Stenhouse did last year in the 17, but this is a guy that I expect to consistently run top 10s. He's got a couple of them, but lately it's sort of been on the downward side, wrecked in the big wreck at Texas yesterday. So really nothing much there. I have him at a C, just, normal stuff. 6 cars not performing all that great. So I have them sitting at a C. David, what about yourself?
Well, I had them at a D coming into this. I mean, but with that being said, I think that grade may be a little bit too harsh, but it's only because based on the merits of a guy like Ryan Newman, multi-year veteran, former champion at this point, former driver of the year, rookie of the year. He's had great seasons in the past, but at this point now it's just, not working out. And Chris Buescher only has 1 top 5, and that's the only top 5 that Roush Fenway has this season. So I'm keeping it at a D at this point, but it's not a knock on a guy like Ryan Newman, who is a veteran and an experienced veteran and a former top guy in NASCAR at this point. I just think, it might be just kind of past his prime just a little bit. So I'm keeping it at a D for Roush Fenway, just based on what I've seen so far this season.
Yeah, David pretty much hit the nail on the head there. I mean, yes, Ryan Newman did have that big wreck, and I imagine there is some sort of a psychological thing that he still will have and will continue to have for however long. But even still, I think a D, I think is about worthy and about right, I think. A C, I would give the team a C if Ryan Newman performed a little bit better and Busch had a little more top five finishes. But without those marquee top five finishes or even a marquee victory, I think that they definitely do falter a good bit, and that's why I give them a D.
JTG Daugherty Racing, a team that's had its many ups and downs throughout their tenure existing in the Cup Series, really been disappointing this year. The 37 car, which Chris Buescher ran really well in for the last couple of years, Ryan Preece has just brought it down completely. A guy that was expected to outperform in, lesser equipment, but no. Worst improved of the year, worst downgrade, minus 9.1 differential in terms of average finish versus what Buescher did in 2019. Johnny, I'm going to start with you. Where are you feeling with JTG?
When you look at the point standings, Ricky Stenhouse is the highest of the group. He's in 25th. That's all I need to know, okay? When you look top to bottom, that consistency is much less there when you compare it to Roush Fenway. And that's why I give him a D again, because I just don't think that the consistency is there. Yes, they have lesser equipment, but even still, you would think there'd be a little bit more of an improvement. And if there was a little bit of a decrease in improvement, it definitely wouldn't be -9 or whatever it's at, like you said. So really, really underperforming, even with the lesser equipment, but that shouldn't be an excuse, I think, even still. I give him a D. Just not really underwhelming.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, but I'm just going to give them a bump on a D plus, just because based on Ricky Stenhouse's 3 top fives in the season. Because I mean, if I'm giving Roush Fenway a straight D for only 1 top 5, it seems only fair I'd just bump it up just a little bit on the grade scale for JTG on that D plus. But Ricky Stenhouse is the only guy who's going to be able to be. If you want to rely on Ricky Stenhouse, he's going to have to be the guy. You cannot rely on Ryan Preece. We've seen that multiple times during the season, and it could even cost Preece a spot with that team. If they want to be competitive, if they want to actually go for it, they're going to have to do some recruiting and find some new guys to take that seat, because I don't see Ryan Preece being a top guy at this point. And it may not be his fault of his own. Maybe JTG needs to do more investing on good engines and good research when it comes to their cars and their engineering. But at the same time, it comes down to the driver at most times, and Preece has not done well at this season. So D plus, sympathy D plus, would have been a D if not for Ricky Stenhouse getting only 3 top fives, but D plus is where I'm going to keep him at this point.
Yeah, in the second Charlotte race, it looked like Stenhouse might become a more consistent driver. He scored a nice 3rd place finish, but aside from the top 5 at Talladega, there's really just been nothing there. And Preece, I feel bad. The guy came in with high hopes last year into the Cup Series, performed well in some Xfinity Series equipment. Picked up, he has 2 wins in the Xfinity Series, but since Cup, there's no sense in, there's no really feeling I get that, this guy's going to he's going to perform better in these cars. It's just, I'm just not feeling it. I feel like we could be on the way to seeing a completely clean slate at JTG Daugherty come 2022 when the new car comes out, because I think there could be better drivers out there that could perform better when the cars, are expected to become more equal. Final team, Chip Ganassi Racing. I have them at a B. Kurt Busch doing a lot better than he did last year. Doesn't have that win, but consistently running top 10s. I think he's a dark horse to make it to that championship 4. He's just always there at the end, always running 5th to 10th. And this is a guy that can pick up 1 or 2 wins before that championship race and can solidify himself as a championship contender and will compete for that 2nd title of his career. The 42 car, it's been interesting. Kyle Larson looked great when he had a job, got fired. Matt Kenseth took a while for him to get back into the swing of things, got that 2nd place at the Brickyard 400, but just wasn't there at Kentucky and Texas. I have them at a B. Johnny, what do you have Chip Ganassi at?
This might have been one of the hardest grades to give, because when you look at the team, it's really hard to really grade a team when one of the drivers got fired and the driver that took his spot was retired for a year plus. So it's really hard to grade it. with that in mind, Kurt Busch has definitely been good. I'll talk about him a little more in a bit, but he has more points than his brother Kyle right now, which is very telling considering Kyle Busch was, again, he was the champion last year. I'll give him a C. I think Kurt Busch is definitely a dark horse to maybe go deep into the playoffs, but I think he'll definitely pick up at least a few more top 5 finishes, if not a win. We'll see, though. But I think a C is really – it's a clean slate. It's a very neutral grade. It's not a failing grade, but they don't have that playoff victory. They don't have those – a little more consistency. Now, again, a C – that's a sympathy C, as David would say, because one of the drivers came out of retirement, and you really can't knock him too much for that. I think a C is very fair. It's very neutral. It's very basic, but it's a C that could potentially become a B later on.
Like your motto should be in college, C's get degrees. We're gonna keep them at a C for now. If Kurt Busch finds a way to perform well once the round of 16 comes around, and he earns himself a spot in there and performs decently well and kind of keeps himself in the hunt, I will move them up to a B at this point. But for right now, they're being a little bit just average. Kurt Busch has had consistent finishes, but it comes down when you're a two-man race team, it's got to be it can't be 80-20. It's got to be 50-50 at some point. So Matt Kenseth needs to step it up a little bit. So I'm going to keep them at a C for now, and I hope Kurt Busch does well. I do. I'm a fan of Kurt Busch. I like what he does. I think he could definitely be in that position to get one of those, squeak into the playoffs. And then once he's in there, he can definitely perform well as long as he, stays consistent and gets some good finishes. So I'm going to keep him at a C for now, but don't be surprised if it goes to a B if Kurt Busch is able to get into that playoff points.
Final driver we'll give a grade to before we get into our awards. That's Bubba Wallace in the one-man Richard Petty Motorsports Chevy. 18.9 average finish this year, which is just, we couldn't have predicted this. Just been having a phenomenal year, even with the off-track distractions. I got an A for him. I just have to give it to him. He's earned it. He's finishing inside the top 15 consistently, with a car that at one point you thought this team is incompetent. They're just going to keep putting out top 30 equipment, not even top 25. And then he comes out this year and it's like, oh, well, now I'm top 20. Well, not only am I top 20, I'm top 15. And at Martinsville, had he not had a little issue with a slower pit stop, could have been in contention for a win. And I just think at some point this team is, maybe even next year, they're going to be consistently in the top 10. Because that sponsorship money is going to keep racking in. They're going to be able to make their equipment better, maybe get a technical alliance going with somebody else, and Bubba Wallace could get that first career win next year, if not steal one at maybe Daytona, the final race of the regular season in August. So I got an A for him. David, how are you seeing Bubba Wallace this year?
I originally had Bubba Wallace and Richard Petty at a C, but then I did a little bit more digging and a little bit more thinking about it. And thinking about what he's done this season in a car that should not be, a middle of the pack. It should be bottom of the pack at this point. And what Bubba has been able to do with that car and with the circumstances, he's done a fantastic job. So I originally had it at a C, but I'm going to stick with Cam. I'm going to give him a B at this point, just based on the factors of what he's had to deal with. Not only
I gave him an A.
Oh, did you? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm going to go. My bad. I wasn't listening. I'm going to go from a C to a B at this point because he does have a little bit more to prove as a driver, but it's going to be more on his team than it is himself. He is a good driver. He is able to perform and hold his own out in that pack, but it's going to be on Richard Petty to actually make sure that they can give him a competitive car that he can put out there every Sunday to go out and win some races. So I'm sticking with a B at this point because there is a little bit more to prove for Bubba, but he definitely has the potential. And just based on the factors of what he's had to deal with, not only team-wise with, a not well-performing car and, just personally with him and all these situations with how the world is right now and the racial tensions that are going on in this country, he's done a fantastic job at sticking to his guns and being himself and being a guy that we can all look at as a feel-good story. So it's a B for me. Bubba Wallace is a great guy and great driver.
This was the second toughest grade to give, and I'll tell you why. The grade I'm about to give, I'm actually going to give you 3 grades. I'm going to give you the grade for the team, the grade for the driver, and a grade for the intangibles the driver has had to deal with. Because when you're a one-man team, that's really the only way I think you can grade it. The team, look, it's a C, okay? And that's being generous, considering all the mechanical issues that car has had. Bubba Wallace has finished within the top 20 when if he had better, more quality equipment, probably could have finished in the top 10 in all of those races. So in that regard, I'll give it a C. If we stay on it too much longer, it might become a D, but let's move on. Bubba Wallace, the driver. Now I'm going to give Bubba Wallace, the driver, a B+, given the fact that he has to deal with all of those equipment issues and the lack thereof of the quality of equipment when you compare them to some of the other blue chip teams that are out there that have multiple drivers and so on and so forth, more money. B+ for Bubba Wallace for being able to go over the hump of the mechanical issues. Now, Bubba Wallace, given the social climate, I'm going to obviously give that grade an A. You know, he's the only African-American driver in the sport right now. Given all the tensions and racial injustice in society and all the stuff that's been going on over the past several months, you know, when you combine that with the issues he's had to deal with the noose incident and then with the Confederate flag stuff, I mean, giving all of that, he's not only a one-man show on the team, he's a one-man show in the entire sport because he's the only one that really can connect and has had to deal with these issues. And being able to deal with those issues the way he had, which I think has been pretty professional, all considered, I think that gives him an easy A. And I think that should definitely be recognized. And as David said, it's definitely a feel-good story.
Moving on, we're going to close this show giving out some awards, some midseason awards. We're going to start with Rookie of the Year. I'm going to go first, and it's got to be Tyler Reddick. Granted, he does not have the victory, but he's showing the consistency that I thought he was going to have coming in. Didn't think so as much as he would now in the A-car. The A-car did not perform last year with Daniel Hemrick at the helm. But Tyler Reddick, a third of the season, he's got top 10 finishes, got 2 top 5s, got the one at Homestead back in June, and then he's got the top 5 on Sunday. Really just a really fun driver. And if he's able, you know, I'd like to see him stay in that 8 car and potentially be a top 5, maybe even a championship contender years down the road. But if he moves to another team with even better equipment, this guy's going to be running top 5s, top 3s, and winning race week in and week out. So I'm really, really glad we're seeing great results from Reddick, and this is only going to propel him into, you know, elite status in the future. So, David, who is your Rookie of the Year so far?
I mean, there really is no one else to pick besides Tyler at this point in the season. I mean, if I had to choose between Tyler Reddick and Cole Custer, like who's the rookie you want to back, who's the rookie you want to put your money on, I put it on Tyler. I know Cole Custer has the one win on the season, but at this point, Tyler just seems like the more consistent driver and the more prepared driver to take that leap to the next level. He may not have a win yet, but it's coming. It's going to be soon. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when at this point. So Tyler's the guy, should be Rookie of the Year in my eyes, and will definitely be a player coming into the next few years. And it really is no competition for me at this point to decide who the Rookie of the Year is. It's going to be Tyler Reddick all the way. He's running the number 8 car super well this season and can do great things in the coming future. Tyler Reddick's the guy.
Even with Cole Custer having a win on the year, which definitely gives him an advantage over Reddick, even with that in mind, Tyler Reddick still has led more laps than Cole Custer has. And Reddick has a better average finish than Cole Custer. Reddick has an average finish in around the 17 range. Cole Custer has a finish in the 20-ish range. And I think if you want to gauge a rookie, usually, now Cole Custer is a little bit of an exception, but usually it takes a couple years for rookies to finally collect that first win. And I think given that, I'm not going to take anything away from Cole Custer's victory, but with that in mind, I think if you want to grade and gauge 2 rookies and comparing the 2 and picking one over the other, I think you have to look at consistency. And I think with that in mind, even with that win Custer has, I still think Reddick has had a little more to his car, and I think he's been that much more consistent than I think Cole Custer has had even with that win. So I'm going to go with Cole Custer as well.
Now, another award that might be a consensus, most valuable driver. There are a couple options you could pick here, but I think there's one that clearly stands out so far in 2020, and that's Kevin Harvick. 6.6 average finish, which is a lot better trending wise than last year. 4 wins on the year, and in races he hasn't won, he's sitting pretty with a top 10 finish. Just keeps racking up points and playoff points to where he's just going to cruise right into the championship 4. I think he's the one guy this year that you can say, yes, he is a lock for the championship 4 come Phoenix in November. So Kevin Harvick, my most valuable driver, my MVD of the year. I'll throw it to Johnny. Who is your most valuable driver of 2020 so far?
It's got to be Kevin Harvick. Let me give you this. He already has 11 top 5 finishes on the year in 18 races. Last year, he had 15 and 36. I mean, that really has to tell you everything you need to know right there. He's been a lot more consistent at the top of the pack, not just in the top 10 range, but in the top 5. But really stands out to me is that last year he started on the pole 6 times, I believe. This year, I think he's only started once or not at all. I could be wrong on that. But to me, he hasn't been lucky in the fact that he's just gotten really good luck of the draw in the drawings, and it's just started at the top and has just been able to keep that. He's had to actually, sometimes pass through traffic to get back to the top. So I think that top to bottom consistency, he's obviously in a class of his own right now. But when when he's in traffic and has to go through traffic, he has the speed and he has the talent to go through it. And I think if you want to be a championship contender, you can't just win solely just off of starting on the pole or starting in second or starting in third. You have to have some good finishes, even if you started in 12th, 13th, and so on and so forth. And Kevin Harvick has done that. And to me, that overall balance from top to bottom, whether you start in first, you start in 12th, whatever, he has the consistency and he has the car to do it. That's why he's my MVP.
Yeah, for me, really, I think you can't go wrong with either picking Kevin Harvick or Denny Hamlin, but I'm giving the edge to Harvick based on, Harvick and Hamlin are tied for most wins, four for each, but I'm giving the edge to Harvick because of the number of top 5s and number of top 10s. Harvick has 11 top 5s compared to Denny Hamlin's 9, and Harvick has 15 top 10s compared to Denny Hamlin's 10 top 10s. So I think Kevin Harvick is definitely the guy to, it really, at this point, it's going to be up to him if he stays in this position and stays at this level, because he has everything to lose at this point and everyone else is just chasing him right now. So it's going to be him. He's going to have to make sure that he can stay at this point and stay at this level if he wants, to win the championship this season. So it's going to be up to him, and I think he definitely has the opportunity and the skill to do it. So Harvick's the most valuable driver for me, and I feel like there's no other. I feel like it's just how it should be. He's just been running so well throughout the entire season.
Moving on to the most improved driver. There's a couple you could give out here. Or I was thinking about giving it to one guy, but he put on an egregious act last Wednesday, and I don't think he's worthy. It's going to be the guy that he took out. Bubba Wallace is my most improved driver. You could see this coming. He's improved his average finish by 5 spots compared to last year at the moment. Just doing everything right in that 43 car this year, and has put himself in that playoff hunt. Only 74 points. Now that may be a wide gap for some, but putting that 43, since it moved to Chevy, putting that team in a position to where they can make the playoffs if a couple guys have bad performances, and he can either rack up a couple top 10s and maybe even steal a win here or there. He's put himself in that position, unlike the last 2 years where he's been 25th pretty much and nowhere close to that playoff bubble. But he's done that this year. I can't praise the guy enough for what he's done. And I hope the 4-3 just keeps getting better year in and year out.
Mine is going to be Austin Dillon this year. I think compared to last year and comparing it to this year, Austin Dillon last year was ranked around 20 to 21st, had no wins, no top 5s, and only 6 top 10s. Fast forward to this year, where he's sitting at about 5 spots above where he was at the end of last season, and has 1 win, 2 top 5s, and 5 top 10s. He's been able to run a lot more consistently this year. He's made a change in crew chief from going from last year to this year, and I think it's definitely helped him out in that situation. He is basically he's being able to solidify himself as more of a player now than last year. Last year he was kind of the luck was not on his side, and now he's definitely has been able to prove himself. And I'm loving what he's doing on the track. I'm loving what he's been able to do personally. I think he's just a good guy and a great driver. He's definitely deserves what he's getting at this point in the season. It's a good showing of when you struggle one year and you're able to bounce back the next and get some good performances. So Austin Dillon's my guy this year for me.
I mentioned him a little bit earlier, but most improved, in particular, most improved over the past 7 to 8 races, currently sit at a plus 2.7 finish differential this year, and that's Eric Almirola. Now, that does bring a little bit of an asterisk. He has 7 consecutive top 10 finishes, 7 consecutive top 10 finishes, best in his career over a consecutive streak like that. However, the asterisk comes, I need to see what he does in low downforce conditions, because all 7 of those top 10 finishes have been in high downforce tracks. I want to see how he does in closer proximity. I want to see how he does on the road courses at Charlotte. If he does that, I think he is by far the runaway most improved driver for me. But even with that said, I think over the past 7 to 8 races, he has been most improved, especially considering before that stretch, he was a little bit iffy. He had some bad finishes, but most improved since practically sports restarted and NASCAR restarted. To me, it's going to be Eric Almirola.
Yeah, you make a good point with wanting to see what he does in low downforce conditions, because when you look at the playoffs, the last 2 races of the year are Martinsville and Phoenix, if that's how it remains, and you throw on Richmond, Bristol, the Roval, those are all playoff races. So the high downforce is really not going to matter come playoff time. Really, it's not going to have that much effect. So yeah, if you go back, we haven't really had much low downforce this year. We've only had Phoenix, Bristol, Martinsville. I think that's it this year so far. Yeah. 3 races only. We got Dover coming up. New Hampshire's the next one on August 2nd. So a lot of things could change in terms of team performance with low downforce conditions. We get that in the back half of the season. Moving on, biggest surprise. This doesn't have to be a positive thing because mine is not a positive thing. So I'm going to start with David here. Your biggest surprise in 2020 so far?
So my biggest surprise is actually going to lead into my biggest disappointment. My biggest surprise is Kyle Busch, the guy who won the NASCAR Cup Series last year in 2019, has 0 playoff points in 2020. His best finish, I believe, is maybe third or fourth at this point. And it's just, it boggles my mind because I've always been, kind of like the far guy from NASCAR who's never really, paid full attention to it, but I always knew who Kyle Busch was. I always knew who Kyle Busch was when it came to NASCAR. I knew he's a really good driver. But now seeing him, actually where I'm watching a race every week and coming into 2020 where he doesn't have any playoff points and he's not had good finishes for most of the year. And it's super surprising because you immediately hear Kyle Busch, you're going to think, oh, he's going to be a top 5 guy in points. He's going to be a decent and always playoff contender. But right now he's barely holding on just in points, has no wins, has no playoff points, and it's super surprising to see. And it's just, I don't know what else to say about it. I don't know what the reason is. I don't know if it's just because his team has had a lot of issues. He's not performing as well. It could be a multitude of things, but right now it's just super surprising that Kyle Busch, the NASCAR guy has any playoff points this season so far.
Yeah, my surprise is sort of going to branch off of yours, David. I'm going to give you 2 numbers, 533 versus 520. Kurt Busch currently has more points than his brother Kyle Busch right now. Now, let's look at it. 8 top 5s and 10 top 10s for Kyle, 4 top 5s, 11 top 10s for Kurt. Okay, a lot more top 5s for Kyle, sure. But when you look at the differential in finishes from last year compared to this year, Kyle Busch is negative 5.1 and Kurt Busch is plus 1.9. And then when you look at that, when you really span it out even more, Kurt's average finish this year is 11.2, which is his best since 2015, and Kyle is around 14, which is his worst since 2014. It's just 2 drivers going in different directions, and really the only thing that's really helping Kyle out right now in the playoff hunt is that the fringe playoff drivers below him have just been a little more inconsistent than Kyle has. That's really the only thing that's helping him stay within that playoff bubble, relatively speaking. So, usually when you think of Kyle and Kurt Busch, yes, they're brothers, but like you said, David, when you think of NASCAR in its current format today, you think of Kyle Busch. You always think he's going to not only get top 5 finishes, but wins. And he's going to contend for championships. And while he did win the championship last year, we really haven't seen that same zest, that same speed, that same consistency that last year saw. We haven't seen that yet this year. Now, it could happen, but right now I think, and of course, no disrespect to Kurt, but usually you think Kyle over Kurt in the brother duo there. But with that said, congrats to Kurt so far. I'm going to give. But yeah, like I said, when you think of Kyle and Kurt, brothers, they're both very successful, but usually you think Kyle over Kurt. But, so far this year, it's been Kurt over Kyle. And I think that's been the biggest surprise, considering the fact that, again, Kyle won the Cup Series last year.
Yeah, and I think we have another consensus pick here because mine is just going to be all of Joe Gibbs Racing. Eric Jones not competing for wins, like I said. Martin Truex Jr. got that win, but has not shown the consistency to where I can be comfortable with him being a semifinal driver or even a championship Ford driver. And that's really, I don't know what's happened. It could be the lack of practice. I honestly think that's the problem because Joe Gibbs, they get their stuff together when they get those 2-3 practices. This has been better, I think, from a crowd standpoint, an action standpoint. We're seeing, more parity because of the lack of practice and teams having to adjust during the race instead of having their equipment ready to go and it's perfect for Sunday. Yeah, I think not having that practice is really taking a toll on Joe Gibbs, and it's really shown that, hey, they really have to work on their cars in practice for them to have it right during the race, which is, it's a surprise, but it's still disappointing. And yeah, and then you throw in Kyle Busch, no playoff points. But I think Kyle Busch will turn around at the Daytona Road Course. He's driven the Rolex 24. I think even without dangerously and stupidly not having practices scheduled for that road course race, I think he's gonna be the guy that gets that win and can relax until the playoffs begin. So yeah, biggest surprise is just how bad Joe Gibbs Racing has been so far this year. And then we'll close with biggest disappointment. I'll go first here. It's got to be Ryan Preece. Minus 9.1 in terms of differential for the 37 team, which just goes to show I think Chris Buescher is a really good driver. And if Chris Buescher was in, top-tier equipment, that guy could be a race-winning contender week in and week out. But, yeah, Preece came in with a lot of high hopes. The 47 wasn't great before, but – it was like, okay, now Preece is going to get it better right here and there. And he did. He got the 37 car, which performed well last year with Chris Buescher, but it's been a miserable year for him. And I don't see how he makes it to 2021 in the 37 car. So we'll move to David.
Yeah, like I said, my biggest surprise was also going to be my biggest disappointment, and it's got to stay with Kyle Busch. It's just the same situation this season has been over and over again. It's either something's wrong with the car or you just hear him on the radio complaining about something. But Cam, you did bring up a good point about there being no practice. That could play a big factor into Kyle. Kyle's been an advocate for saying, just at least let us go out there with a few sets of tires and just try something. And I think that definitely could play a factor in him, not performing as well. But at the end of the day, he's driven these same racetracks for multiple years at this point. He should know them like the back of his hand. And he's done super well at mostly all of these racetracks. So it's just surprising that this year is the year where he can't get anything done and is basically he is the disappointment of the season in my eyes, especially for a front runner, a mainstay front runner like Kyle is.
I could go chalk here and say Kyle Busch is also my disappointment, but thinking about it, I'm not going to go with a low blow, so to speak. But I mean, look, I don't think a lot of people expected the 00 car to do a lot anyway. However, Quinn Houff, he's a professional driver. I've heard him speak in pre-race pressers. He seems pretty professional. He seems pretty knowledgeable. He seems like he knows what he's talking about. However, the disappointment is that his little escapade that he pulled in the race yesterday that trapped a lot of drivers in the field was dangerous. It leads to a potential talking point we could have in future episodes about should he be in the Cup race? Now again, the 00 wasn't expected to do a lot anyway. It's a small tier team, so on and so forth. However, Quinn Houff, even with that in mind, has made a lot of rookie mistakes, no pun intended. And I think that is a big disappointment, especially considering that in the race yesterday, no offense to Austin Dillon, that the race could have gone a whole lot differently if that little mishap did not happen. So with that in mind, I'll go with Quinn Houff. It's not a low blow, I swear, but yeah, that's where we're at.
Money talks. That's all I got to say about that. And yeah, we will be discussing, a theory that is unlikely, but it would make sense. And that's a potential, how soccer does it with promotion and relegation involving the trucks, Xfinity Cup, and, maybe even throw ARCA in there as well. That will do it for episode 10 of the Rich Report. Thanks for watching. If you are on YouTube, if you're listening, thanks for listening as well. We'll be back Wednesday. We got a special episode, a special MLB season preview on Wednesday. We're going to be dressed in our favorite teams' jerseys. It's going to be a very fun show. Look forward to it. See you guys Wednesday. Have a great rest of your day.